right, welcome back to another show. We have some very, very interesting topics to cover on today's Friday show here on the Fin Summit YouTube channel. So, welcome to the live stream here. I'm going to have to make this one slightly quicker than usual. I'm on a bit of a time limit today, but that's okay. I'm going to breeze through this all. So, as you are coming in, ladies and gents, let's smash up those likes and double check that we are subscribed to the Fin Summit YouTube channel. And let's cover this. So we saw the $67,000 range respected quite well here in this market, and we saw a good series of bounces across, roughly a 25-day period since we actually got up here. But since then, we did actually end up breaking lower, and now have found ourselves around the $65,000 price area. Now, unfortunately, what that means is this previous zone that we were able to use as support now could be potentially turning into resistance if we get back up here. And that would definitely be a problem because it's also quite a strong area of resistance, in my opinion. And we can actually get a sense of appreciation for that by looking at some of the key reversals that have taken place here. For example, this being the most significant major reversal that we've seen off the $67,000 price level for resistance, where we went from 67K all the way down to 56 just off this price level. The time before that, we went from 67 all the way down to 59. So again, quite a big set of pullbacks that we've seen off this price level, and of course, strong support, right? So that does mean that the path ahead is going to be potentially shaky for Bitcoin at this stage, but it's not all horrible because we haven't actually closed a daily candle yet. And I think that's really important, right? While everybody else is definitely going to start panicking and they're going to panic very quickly, typically what you will find is that we do still have some really nice opportunity to recover back up, just purely based off the fact that we haven't gotten that daily close yet in this market. So I think that is very here as well. I think a lot of people are going to be losing track of that while they are panicking, but obviously that's not what we are interested in doing right here on this stream. Everyone pound the likes. Thank you very much. So if we look a little bit lower at what we've got beneath us now, we do have some pretty good support levels below us, and that's why I'm not actually too worried. We also are trading sideways in a very respectable range, and that hasn't changed either. I want to draw your attention back to what happened in 2023, where we spent 7 months going sideways here. And actually, the similarities are eerie because this range spanned roughly a 22% range here. And if we measure what we've been dealing with here, this also spans roughly a 22% range, but we've been here now for about 108 days. Now, what's really interesting is that this range, we were inside of it for about 220 days, which means that it's roughly the half of the amount of consolidation that we saw last time. And of course, it resulted in a really nice big breakout. But the other thing that you've got to keep in mind is that it resulted in this breakout in the face of a lot of resistance, right? Above 30K, this massive rally up that we had, this was a 3 times gain from the low down here. Above 30K, we managed to rally really well, but we had a lot of resistance from 2021 and 2022. And I think that makes this really interesting because if we're facing a lot of resistance from the previous years and we're still able to rise up so well, what happens when we've got the exact same chart pattern that we've been developing now for half of the time in a very similar price range percentage-wise, but we have no resistance up ahead because we've never actually traded above 74K. So it actually starts opening up some really interesting questions and conversations about where this thing can go if it does end up popping. And based off what we saw last time, we were fine as long as we were holding this floor at 25K. I think it's quite clear to see that the equivalent floor right now is about $60,000 with a bit of leeway down to this red line as a potential liquidity zone where we could definitely get a macro bounce off this level, but perhaps with a quick dip down first, right? So I think there's going to be a little bit of tolerance all the way down to 57. Now, personally, I think that if we end up coming down here, I wouldn't really expect that this level will hold as a liquidity grab zone, and I will have to expect that we go lower because we've spent so long up here. But we'll get to that in a little bit because there's something else I want to cover with you before we even get there, which is the intermediary support levels. And I've already touched on this briefly, but I do think that there is a really nice bit of support to be found here for the price at $64,000. And the reason for that is we've seen a lot of kind of consolidation, a lot of reversals taking place here, whether it's small stuff or slightly bigger stuff that doesn't quite reach here, but it definitely gets quite close.
You know, and of course, that's not even to mention the original resistance that we found right before we set the all-time high earlier this year. So I think that this is definitely an important price level for Bitcoin. And the thing is we haven't even reached it yet. So that does tell me that this dump might not be over yet. But I would expect that we end up going down there. And it is something that we've done quite often in this market. In fact, I've got this drawn out on a different chart for you guys where it's even clearer. And what's very, very clear to see if we throw on the VPVR on this chart, and actually remove this bottom box here, is that this is where two of the big spikes actually take place on the chart, which creates a really nice, easy to spot valley in the VPVR. And these valleys are actually typically where you see really quick accelerated price action. So this is something I was just talking about on my YouTube channel. I was just live there. We just wrapped that up. So if you want to check that out, you can watch the replay. There's a lot of very, very interesting details that I've covered there. You'll find my link to my YouTube channel, as always, in the description of this live stream. And you can go ahead and catch that right after this one. But what we were covering there was how, with those big spikes, this is where you would expect reversals to take place. And so naturally, when you're kind of finding yourself in the middle of this range, that's actually where you would expect, in my experience, generally quite accelerated price action, right? And we've actually already seen that come in so many different ways. I just want to draw this out for you very briefly. And again, you can get much more detail on that by watching that live stream, which we just finished up there. But you can see how, a lot of the time we've actually zipped very quickly up and down through this range. And, there are some exceptions where we had kind of fake outs here, but, just each instance of this pink line showing you a complete move in this range, that is quite a lot, right? And I may have even missed one or two, but I think that's actually all of them. If we go ahead and count that, that's 3 over here, 5 over here. I'm sorry, can I count properly? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 7 total. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 instances up until right now, where we have completely traveled between these two price ranges, and we did so very quickly. And the reason that I actually like this is that those are where you start seeing really easy trading opportunities typically. And so for me, that does potentially open up the 63, 64K range as a next potential zone where I might be interested in taking some trades in this market. So that is definitely going to be something that I'm looking forward to over here as well. So, if we do end up losing that level, then like I said, the low 60s, 60K, basically a final kind of line of defense, 61, 60K, where Bitcoin has been bouncing off quite nicely. If we do manage to get above 67K, then I think it could be a rally back up to all-time highs, because that would make all of this basically a fake out, and that would be so bullish for this market. I would absolutely love to see it. So that's going to be something that I'm also personally keeping an eye out for as well in this market. One thing that I think is interesting, which some people might be looking at, is the S&P 500. Obviously, it had a really bullish Wednesday, which is when it gapped up over here, but since then it has been sliding slightly lower. Now, a lot of people really like to see these gaps getting filled with the S&P 500, and if you follow that school of thought, then you might actually anticipate that the S&P 500 is going to fill that gap some point throughout next week, perhaps. And obviously, this trading session will be ending very, very shortly, only within 1 hour from now. So we might see a resolution to that on Monday. It might be a weekend with these traditional finance markets switched off for Bitcoin. So we kind of see how that goes for us. But if we are going to see the S&P 500 start dipping down, in my experience, there is a pretty clear correlation between these markets where we do see Bitcoin kind of trace what the S&P 500 does. And I think in this case, the reason we're not actually seeing it is probably because the S&P 500 is being dragged up by a few key stocks like Nvidia and Apple and so on. But the rest of the index not actually doing particularly great. And I think that actually gets confirmed by looking at the dollar here, because, I think Bitcoin's drop is definitely coinciding with the dollar. And typically there is a quite clear inverse correlation between the S&P 500 and the dollar. Okay, these are just things that I've spotted as general rules throughout time. There are a lot of people that still disagree with these kind of hypotheses, and that's completely fine. But what I would urge you to do is check for it yourself and see if you agree one way or another, because you are ultimately the most important person who has to decide how you feel about this market. So there you go, guys. Some really, really interesting price action here. There's a couple more bits I want to cover before I sign off for this one. I want to take a look at some altcoins. We've seen Solana drop down to the $140 level. It's lost some of its important support. We've seen this happen across some of the meme coin markets as well, which I know are much less serious, but still a lot of money to be made here. So it is something I want to watch at least, gently, and kind of keep an eye out for it, where there might actually be a really nice opportunity opening up later on. I don't think we're there yet. Ethereum against Bitcoin continuing to slide down, and Bitcoin's dominance continuing to move up as well. So these are all very much expected patterns that we would be looking for. And so, yeah, I think the ball is really in Bitcoin's court now. I think if Bitcoin's able to find support off that 64, 63K level, that could be what leads us to that next attempt of the 67K level. But every time we slip down, we are leaving more resistance above us, right? So if we get down here and actually slip below 64, 63, I would have to expect that, we're going to be seeing even more resistance again on the way up. And obviously that could make things a little bit harder for Bitcoin. Is this an opportunity now where Bitcoin could be looking to fall down into the 50s and 40s? Potentially. I think it's too early to say. I would love to see it. It would be great for trading, but realistically, is that actually going to happen? I don't really know. I still feel like the chances of that happening are slim, but I would love to see it, and it's definitely something that I'm going to be watching out for. As usual, you'll be able to continue to catch live streams on this YouTube channel right here. So definitely make sure you are subscribed so that no matter what happens, you've got us right here with you with this price action. Obviously, going live around the clock, around the week as well. So if you want to see more from me, you're going to find the link to my YouTube channel in the description down below. And with that, thank you all very, very much for watching. I will see you all on